Thank you so much for joining me in today's video. I finally finished the sketchbook, which means sketchbook tour time. But before I jump into the video, I just want to say the art and poetry book that my friend and I have been working on for the longest time is available for pre-orders. The link will be in the description if you would be interested in checking it out. With each milestone that we reach, we do have rewards associated with it, so the link will be in the description. So I started this sketchbook, which is a watercolor sketchbook by Strathmore on August of last year and finished April of this year, so it took me about 8 months to finish. So what I wanted to first do was a landscape study from real life. It's not my best work, but you know, it's okay. It's done with watercolors, and I think it's just the feeling that I was going for is just much different than how the results ended up being. I wanted a more looser look where you could still tell what things were, but instead here a lot of the things ended up blending into each other, and it's more detailed than I would have liked. Here, the place that we were staying at had a fireplace, so I just tried to replicate that, and these two are from Google. I saw a thumbnail as I was scrolling through YouTube, I think, and I thought it would be interesting just to create this landscape. It has water, it has clouds, and those are the things that I usually like to test and experiment with and try to get right, because weirdly they are challenging things to draw and paint. Here, as you can see, there are more clouds. This is probably one of my favorite pages. This is my favorite flower, carnation, and at first I just went with watercolors, but I found that it was a bit too messy, so I went over it with ink, and I just really like the look of it. And based off of that, I tried to use a similar technique where I first laid down the color and then I went over it with ink, and I think it turned out okay. It turned out, you know, the way that I kind of was expecting it to turn out. I also didn't use the full page, so that was cool. Here I wanted to do more landscape studies, specifically like water and the sky, but I didn't use a reference photo, so the lesson here is make sure you use a reference photo if you don't want things to turn out this way. But I do like the colors that I chose. I like the navy and the red and the orange. I think this color scheme is a pretty color scheme, so I don't really mind it that much. If you've watched my previous sketchbook tour, you will know that whenever I don't know what to paint, I just paint these flowers. They are just very simple, very easy to create, doesn't even take that long, and it does kind of get me out of my head usually. Seeing how the first page turned out this way, I thought I could probably do better and could try painting another landscape, and here I tried to go as loose as I possibly could and then went over it with ink to add the details, and I think this was more successful than the first page. This is also one of my favorite pages. I don't know what the English name is called, but in Turkish this is called Galata Kulesi. It's a famous landmark in Istanbul, Turkey, which is where I'm from. Well, I'm not from Istanbul, but I am from Turkey. And I think this was probably my most successful use of color in this sketchbook so far. I really like the blue and the pinks here. I like the orange and the navy here. So this was probably one of the more successful pages in terms of what I was going for and achieving that look. This page I'm not going to give too many details about, but it does relate to the book that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, that's all I will say. This sketchbook piece, I was again trying to go with a loose look, but I didn't really like the way it turned out, especially with the flowers where I wasn't really careful of my placement of colors, so you couldn't really differentiate the petals. So I went over it with black ink, and then I tried to salvage it with gouache, white gouache, and you know, it's okay. That's what sketchbooks are for. It's for everything good, everything bad, everything in between. In this page, seeing how the previous page turned out, I I needed to kind of recover from that, and I decided to go with just painting some clouds. So I was facilitating some sketchbook sessions, and I believe this was a part of that. I could be wrong, but that's how I remember it. And I thought I was being super cool with adding yellow to the parts that were in the sun and purple for the parts that were in the shadows. I was again trying to go with that looser look, as you can probably tell from my use of ink. I think I could have been a bit more careful of where I placed the color, but it's okay. It's just blobs. Like I just took colored pencils and I believe markers too, and I just played around with blending, no pressure. Another page where reference photos were not used, and it's very evident, it's very clear. It's just flowers are my go-to when I don't know what to draw or paint, and if a flower turned out this way, I mean, should probably use reference photos. This page, it was part of the sketchbook sessions that we were facilitating, so we had to kind of focus more on the typography, and the topic I believe was our favorite food or foods, or something that's our favorite. I'm not super sure, but this is kind of what I went with. This was also another session, I believe, and this is more abstract, where we had to choose a shape and fill a page with that. This was more like a warm-up, but I was fine just putting it in my sketchbook. This was again another sketchbook session, and you can probably tell I've been very obsessed with architecture, specifically Turkish architecture, and trying to capture the elegance and the peace that comes with visiting those places, or at least for me. And it was also a nice way to incorporate two of my main mediums, so ink and watercolors. So in this page, I tried to go with a similar feeling as this page, but I think this page was probably more successful. That's not to say, you know, this page sucked, but it's just, it's okay. Like the colors are fine, everything's fine. Just the other page, I like it more. In this page, I wanted to try, my friend and I had talked quite a bit about like the dark academia aesthetic, and we even like made a huge list of things, of objects that kind of fall under that category. And I just wanted to draw a chess piece, honestly, a broken chess piece, and I was itching to use ink and not really add as much color, because so far a lot of the pages have been color, 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 and I think I've been doing that because it's a watercolor sketchbook and I've been very inclined to use watercolors because of that. But it was just nice to go simple, where the only pop of color would be the gold paint here, which I'm not sure if it shines, but there we go. In this page, I just recreated the cover here, just in a slightly more realistic way, I guess. I like my use of color here. Again, it's just the orange, the red, and the blue color scheme I really like, so I didn't really mind it. Seeing how I liked this page, I then went ahead and did another page of clouds. This one probably less successful, but it's okay. So in this page, I kind of knew that the entire time I was being too precious with my sketchbook. I think it's just that, like, look at the pages. Hold on. The pages are thick. They feel good quality, and it feels like you shouldn't waste it and that it shouldn't go to waste. Because of that, I decided I'll just get ink, just paint, just scribble on this page, and try to get over the feeling of, you know, this sketchbook is so precious. I need to make a lot of finished pieces. All the pieces need to be perfect and whatnot. This sketchbook piece was also part of one of the sketchbook sessions that we were facilitating. I think for this one we had to pay attention to like the foreground and the background and try to capture a bit of depth. And I liked how, you know, loose the background is, as it does meet the prompt. This was also one of the sketchbook sessions. I think here we had to use a color scheme from the color wheel, so I chose blue. I think it's called split complementary, but that was my color scheme. I used blue, red, and yellow, and then added some shine with white gouache. Going back to the idea about being too precious with this sketchbook, I decided that I'm just going to grab something from my desk and just place it on my bed and sketch it. I'm not even going to, you know, be super careful about how it turns out. I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm not going to add color. I'm just going to fill this page with a very quick real life study. In similar vein, just, you know, a water bottle placed on my bed and quickly sketched. And this piece, just an abstract piece, I was playing around with the light, the line weight, and the thickness, and yeah, it was just, again, trying to get less precious with my sketchbook and just trying to enjoy it instead. This page, I just gave it to my younger brother. He drew one of our cats. Yeah. Here I had seen for this piece a thumbnail, I believe, on YouTube. And I think this is probably one of my more successful use of color with watercolors in this sketchbook. Like, I look at the door and I see a bit of orange, yellow, blue, and they don't look muddy together. They blend in perfectly. The wall, there's different colors there. On the floor, there are different colors. So I think all of the previous attempts, even though they were, you know, not perfect, kind of led me to this little painting study. And this one, I just found an image off of Pinterest and replicated that. So I have a lot of hand symbolism and use a lot of hands in my finished pieces. And it had been a while since I practiced them, as you can probably tell with the way they turned out. But I decided that I should probably go back to practicing hands, and you can probably tell it's my finger. So this piece was done similar to the chess piece, the broken chess piece. And I just really wanted to use ink. I wanted to use the gold paints. There are these certain days where I'm just really craving shading with ink and using ink pens. So this was one of those days, and I think this was also part of a video on my YouTube channel. So I have a sketchbook. Here we go. I have a sketchbook, and this actually needs to be finished urgently. And I was thinking that I could try finish it in a week and make a video of that. And I did some thumbnail sketches and tried to go with a similar feeling as this piece. I'm glad I did the thumbnail sketches, because then it made me realize that I probably don't want to go with a similar feeling. Only because I wouldn't have as many ideas or enough ideas to fill an entire sketchbook with it. So this sketchbook piece, I like it, and let me explain why. Through all of the previous attempts that you've seen where I first laid down watercolors in a loose way and then I had to go over it in ink because it didn't turn out the way I liked them to. This was the look I was going for. This was the feeling that I was going for. Like, you can see that I didn't use ink. I didn't feel the need to use ink. Just I let the watercolors do their thing. I let them blend in, blend out. It's just, this is the feeling that I was going for, and I'm glad that I was able to achieve that at least once in the sketchbook. Yeah, in this page, I just didn't even sketch. I grabbed a pen, drew a whole bunch of snakes. I think at this point I was kind of getting tired of using a lot of wet media. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and use a bit more of the dry mediums that I have. So I drew this page first, and this is from the TV show called Kuruluş Osman, and there are a lot of historical Turkish shows now. The theme of their outfits, the set design, just everything, it's so elegant, so beautiful, and they capture the era so beautifully. And I just wanted to have something like that in my sketchbook, something that's just so pretty. And this is also from a show, I believe. It's just a police action show. Here I had more practice, I would say, with the pose rather than the outfit. The outfit wasn't too challenging compared to this page, but yeah. So I didn't have a lot of ideas. I knew I wanted to use my sketchbook, but I just didn't know what to draw. And a lot of the pins that I've saved on Pinterest had origami, some sort of origami in them. So I decided, you know what, let's just fill an entire page with origami. So that's what I did. This was another attempt at a loose watercolor. I just wish I had sketched properly underneath so that I could at least, you know, be a bit more careful with my color placement instead of just randomly putting a whole bunch of color on the page. But it's okay, you know, that's what a sketchbook is for. You experiment and you learn. My friends and I had a virtual art night, and our prompt was blue and a sea animal, I think. That's what I remember from that night. And betta fish, it's my go-to. So I had to just draw betta fish. I love them. They're so elegant. They're so beautiful. This was another virtual art session with my friend. We followed, so she was getting into watercolors, so we decided to follow a tutorial online. And again, this is the type of look that I was going for, where it's loose, but you can also tell what is happening. And there wasn't really a need to use ink to outline shapes so that people who looked at the piece knew what was happening. Here I had some new brush pens that I wanted to try, but I wasn't really feeling particularly happy, hence the withered flowers and a lot of notes. I didn't really like the previous page, so this page was a huge step up from that, just going back to ink and experimenting and playing around with shading with ink, which I love doing in my final finished illustrations. So I thought I could also do something like that in my sketchbook. This time I used a reference photo, you can probably tell, and I was, I think, feeling better. I mean, just seeing the way it turned out in comparison to the previous page. So this sketchbook page I've made a video about already, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It's not my favorite, mainly because of the way the process was. The process wasn't enjoyable, but yeah, I have a video just talking about that. Here I just drew on a loose piece of paper and then put it in there. I tried something new with the shading, where I didn't really shade, I didn't use cross hatching, but instead just had solid blocks of color for where it would be kind of darker. I quite like this painting, to be honest. Again, it goes back to the color scheme that I quite enjoy, the blue, red, and yellow. And this is the last page of the sketchbook. I also have a video of this. It's a gouache painting, which I think is the only gouache painting or the second gouache painting in the sketchbook, if we exclude, you know, all the white gouache highlights. I need to use gouache more. It's a fun medium. And here is another loose leaf. I just painted on another page, another paper, and this was, I think, another virtual art session with my friend where we kind of drew what we wanted to do for the summer, and for me it was just going to cafes and different places. And that concludes this sketchbook tour. Thank you so much for watching this video, and next week I'm hoping to start a new sketchbook, so please do stay tuned for that if you'd be interested. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you take care.